Everyone dreams of quitting corporate. Well, last year I did exactly that, and within 3 or 4 months I was making $20,000 a month, literally 3 or 4 times more than the most I'd ever made as an employee. And then not long after that, I shut it down. Not because it didn't work, because it did. I shut it down because I realized that I'd built a trap with better branding. The same cage with different bars. Instead of one boss, I now had multiple. Instead of one calendar, I now had multiple. And instead of one set of expectations, I now had multiple sets of expectations. And I was the only person holding the whole thing together. So in this video, I'm going to run you through what happened, how I made it work so fast, why I walked away even when the money was starting to flow in, and what I would do differently now. Because the lesson I learned in all of this isn't quit corporate or escape the matrix. The lesson is in what happens when you escape one prison and you accidentally build yourself another. So to tell the story, we've got to rewind to 2024. At the start of 2024, I did what everyone does. I wrote down my goals for the year. I told myself that this was the year that I'm going to execute. This is the year that things are going to change. And then work ramped up, life got busy, and I just got pulled straight back into the same old loop. And the scary part about it all was how fast time seemed to move. I literally blinked and it was fucking April. Blink again and it was July. And by September, I looked at the goals that I'd written down back in January and it wasn't just sad. It was fucking pathetic. Like genuinely fucking pathetic. Not because the goals that I'd set were wrong, but because the progress that I'd made towards them was literally zero. And here's the worst part. Somehow, I had been working my ass off all year, harder than ever before. So I sat down and I asked the obvious question, what the fuck is going on here? And I found that the answer was relatively straightforward. I had no bandwidth. I was working 50 or 60 hours a week, always on my employer's schedule, always reacting and always tired. I'd try and claw back some time to work on my business late in the evenings. And then I'd be fucking cooked the next day. I'd work all day Saturday and Sunday on the weekends. And then Monday would just come like hell. And ultimately what I learned is that you cannot build a new life in the scraps of energy left over by an old one. It just doesn't work. So not long after sitting down and looking at the supreme lack of progress towards my goals, I hit the wall. In October, I asked myself, what the fuck am I going to do about this? I couldn't just quit my job on the spot because I was financially fragile. So I made a decision and a commitment that was final. I told myself, I will ride this out to the end of the year. I will stack literally every dollar, go full frugal, and come the 1st of January 2025, I would rather starve than do another fucking year of my life like this. That was the mindset. I'm quitting corporate and I'm never going back, and I'm going to make it work one way or another. And then the next problem hit me almost immediately. Okay, but make what work? What? You don't have a business. You've got nothing. All I had at the time was a bunch of failed side hustles. I didn't have any revolutionary business ideas. I didn't have a product. I didn't have a startup. All I had was the skills that I had been selling to my employer. So I literally chose the simplest thing that could possibly work. Do exactly what I'm already doing in my current job, but sell it to the market instead of selling it to one employer. Not because it was sexy, but because it was real and I literally couldn't think of any other option. And then I asked myself, well, how do I reduce the risk of this being a total catastrophe? And to my credit, I did one smart thing. Instead of burning the bridge with my old employer, I managed to flip them into my first client so I wasn't starting from absolute zero. And thankfully, that worked out. So then January rolled around, I left Australia and I relocated to Bali, and my first client, which was my old employer, ultimately kept me really busy for that first month. So that was literally my runway. But February was always going to be the real test because the agreement that I'd struck with them was designed to scale down full-time in January, and then 3 days a week in February, and then it would drop off to 2 or less from March onwards. And the moment that scale down hit at the start of February, I panicked, like proper panic. Because suddenly it wasn't theoretical anymore. I coasted through January and then I got hit with the realization, what happens when this money stops coming? Like, how the fuck do I get clients? Is this a delusion? Am I about to embarrass myself publicly? Am I going to have to crawl back and beg for a job? That was literally the mental state back then. So I did what any desperate man does and I went to the internet. I went to YouTube. I didn't have time for books. I didn't have time for philosophy. I needed somebody to tell me how the fuck can I get new clients tomorrow before my revenue goes to zero and I can't afford to pay my rent. So I consumed literally everything I could find on sales and marketing for about a week. Then I downloaded LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I built a lead list, and I started firing off the worst DMs imaginable to complete strangers. This was a true ice cold start. No brand, no content, no audience, no social proof, nothing. Just me, a average quality list, and pure desperation. And I want you to really understand just how scrappy this was. The first day that I ever sent outreach, I sat down and I had heard that you need to review and look for triggers and make sure you're targeting the most relevant people and hit them with a custom message. And so I sat down and I spent half of the day messaging 21 people, 4 fucking hours. And I got back a grand total of 0 replies. I waited the first day, nothing came through. Second day, nothing came through. At that point, I was just like, holy fuck. I'm actually fucked. I'm actually fucked. I've just added a bunch of strangers and no one cares. No one will even talk to me. And so the weekend hit and I was in psychological turmoil, to say the least. I went back through my LinkedIn history and audited what I did next, and I still to this day cannot believe it. So Monday morning rolls around and I've spent the entire weekend panicking because I fired off about 21 DMs on a Wednesday and got no fucking responses at all. So what do? I set an alarm for 4:30 in the morning on Monday. I woke up, I sat down at LinkedIn, and I pulled a list of every single person on my LinkedIn, every single one. And I blasted the same shitty AI-generated template to 347 people in one morning. Now, I'm honestly lucky that LinkedIn didn't flag me for spam or get my profile put in LinkedIn jail. But here is the fucking insane part. It worked. And you probably weren't expecting that. Neither was I. And that very first yes that I got back then, that was a point of no return for me. Because up until then, I had hope, but I didn't have belief. Hope is just a story that you tell yourself. Belief, on the other hand, is what happens when reality gives you a receipt. And that very first deal for me was the proof that this was actually possible. It wasn't just about the money. It was the point where I realized this whole thing can actually be done if you're willing to lean into the discomfort long enough. So fast forward a bit, and within 6 weeks of starting outreach, I had won enough work that I'd basically ran myself to full capacity, especially with the legacy work that was still trickling in from my old employer. And by May, I had crossed $20,000 per month. Now, that was insane money for me at the time. If you had told October 2024 me that I'd be making 20 grand a month while living internationally, I would have thought you were fucking hallucinating. But here's where the story turns, and this is the part I didn't expect. More money did not feel like freedom. It felt like pressure, because I wasn't scaling an asset. I was scaling myself. I was spinning plates. I had multiple people depending on me all at the same time. And the lesson hit me hardest the next month in June, where I had a trip in Europe that had been booked long ago with my family. There's this one single moment from that trip that is permanently burned into my brain. I'm in Sicily in a villa. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd gotten back from a long Italian dinner that finished up around 1 a.m. And I felt like absolute death. I hadn't really slept at all. And I'm on a client call at 4 o'clock in the morning because I have to be. And I remember after the call thinking to myself, what the fuck have I actually done here? I quit one job and accidentally built another, except now I'm juggling multiple bosses instead of one, and now I've got to work at fucked up times a day to stay aligned with the clients I have in different time zones. It's a golden cage. And I didn't switch off a single day on that trip, not one. I was on my laptop every single day for a minimum of 5 hours. There was a point in Porto where I worked something like 30 hours during a 72-hour stay. That's not travel, that's just moving your prison to a nicer location. So when I got back to New York City where I was living at the time, I made the call. I stopped selling immediately because all I was selling was my time, and I went back to the drawing board. And here's the interesting part looking back now. I don't actually think that stopping selling was the right decision. I'm certain that it was a mistake. Because the real problem wasn't that I was selling, it was just that I was saying yes to anything. I was selling custom, strategic, bespoke work where every single client was basically a brand new project started from nothing. And that turns you into a bottleneck instantly. And I hadn't even conceived the idea of hiring someone to help me. So if I can go back in time, I would not shut sales down. I would keep selling, but I would narrow down what I was selling. And I would hire some help early while I was doing it. I would collapse the client delivery into a templated system under live fire instead of pausing momentum to rebuild. Because momentum is the rarest thing in business. And when you kill it, getting it back is brutal. It is so precious. So that's the real lesson from this story. It's not quit corporate. If you escape your job, but your income is still tied directly to your hours, you haven't built yourself freedom. You've actually built yourself a more stressful job with better pay. If you actually want to build freedom and sovereignty, you need leverage. You need a model where the delivery doesn't require you to be online at 4 o'clock in the morning in Sicily, feeling like a corpse and pretending that you're living the dream. And the only way that you get that is by selling something that can be repeated, systemized, and delegated. And that is what I'm building now, because more money isn't freedom if it costs you your life to earn it.